All right, we've got our session 0 done. It's in the books, and now we're ready to start prepping for session 1. So let's get into it. Welcome back, everybody. So a couple of weeks ago, we had our session 0, and didn't go according to plan. My kids actually brought home COVID. We're not exactly sure where they got it. We managed to go the whole time without getting COVID, but we had it, so we decided to do our session 0 over Discord, and it worked out just fine. It was perfect for a session 0. It's not a huge deal. The only downside to that is we did have some extra time where we could have had an adventure, but I decided not to do it because we weren't in person. So we'll just do it session 1. Just to show you kind of how they have the outlook here in Notion, we've got our old session notes, and within there I have moved our session 0 notes to this location so that we can reference these in all of our old session notes as we go through and use them. Will be put in here, and we have an archive of all of that, which is pretty useful, I think. The other thing I've done is clicked on this little button, which populates a blank session notes template, and then you can go in and fill it out, which I've done, so that we can get this thing going. So, a few things we want to talk about before we get diving into the preparation for session 1, which is our pre-adventure. I'll put a link in the card and in the description for our pre-adventure that I wrote. It's not the world's best, I understand that, but it'll get us from level 1 to level 3, no problem. And I've taken some suggestions from some comments. So session 0, we talked about COVID, how that kind of affected things. We had to do it over Discord. It still worked out okay. Character creation is what it is. I was able to answer some questions that they had. We talked about some expectations, some rules. Everything went pretty much according to plan otherwise, except for the crazy COVID stuff. By the way, everyone's healthy and fine. No worries there. At session 0, we created some characters, so let's talk about some of them. I've got them down here, and actually, I think the best place to show you this is in notes. We've got a character section, and then we've got a table here, and this is Sly Flourish created this. Links for everything of his in the description, obviously, but I've populated this with my player characters. So the first is Chosen, who is a bugbear barbarian, and he talked about why he's out adventuring and some notes, and then we've got a portrait of him. So I'm going to print these out on cardstock for each of my players and give them little minis. So we talked about this in our last video, but this is Irvin. I'll do this for all my player characters. Not all of them have gotten me portraits yet, and that's totally okay. One of them is actually planning on drawing their character, which is really, really cool. I'm excited to look for that. But we've got that. We've got little notes for each of them. You can just open each of them. So we've got Chosen the Bugbear. Dimitri is a gnome fighter. Iris is a halfling warlock. Jimmy is a sea elf druid, and then Nell is a human bard. And then here we've got in this table, we've got all of the skills they're proficient in. So if I want someone who's proficient in religion to make a check, I can come here real quick and say, all right, religion looks like Iris. Go ahead and make a religion check. And then we can give information as needed. Passive scores here, so perception we'll use quite a bit. The rest of them, I don't use a ton of, like insight. It's there. We'll see if we use it. And then I've got links to each of the D&D Beyond character sheets, and that's just if I need to pull something up real quick. And lastly, we have languages. I think this will become very useful in the future. Depending on who's talking, we can just look up real quick and say, Nell, you understand because you speak Orcish, you understand this. And then last I'm going to have a section where I'm tracking their ruidium exposure. This won't be a thing for probably a few chapters. Who knows how many months down the line that'll be, but it's here, and we'll probably sort this out once we get there. All right, so let's go back to our session 1 notes, and there's our characters. All right, so in session 0, my party picked the Norgab Horde as their faction. So this isn't something that they're necessarily going to join and be working for the entire time, but it's just a way to get the adventure going and a way to get the party together. In the adventure that I wrote, it assumes that your party all know each other. They come every year to the Festival of Merit, and they come to Jigao, and they meet at the Unbroken Tusk Inn. This isn't the case for my party. They decided they didn't want to do that, and I'm okay with that. That's totally fine. I shouldn't have to pigeonhole you into something, right? If that's what they want to do, that's great. I have a little more work on my end. That's okay. So what I've done is created an NPC. Her name is Pequeña. She's an orc within the Norgab Horde. And what she wants to do, her goal is to work her way up in the Horde itself, in the faction. So in my game, the factions have a friendly competition every year, where the Gakthis clan and the Norgab Horde put together 2 teams, and the teams compete, and whoever gets the most points you get points by essentially winning or doing well in the various challenges that the festival offers. Whoever wins that is the winner for the year, and they get bragging rights. The faction leader gets this ceremonial headdress that they wear to the council meetings, and mostly it's about bragging rights in Jigao. Pequeña, our NPC, is trying to put together a team to help to impress the faction, and hopefully they do well enough that'll help Pequeña advance in the faction itself. So she's going to be the one that recruits the party and gets them together, and I've come up with a couple of different ideas for how I'm going to do that. So Chosen and Jimmy They were hanging out in the Meatwaters, which is near the docks. Pequeña was impressed with Chosen's size and strength and just kind of talking to them, thought the two of them made a great team, and kind of invited them to meet her at the Unbroken Tusk Inn, the first members of the party she recruited. So they'll be there. That's how they get to the Unbroken Tusk Inn at the beginning of the adventure. Next is Dimitri. So Pequeña was out at the Blushing Bear Tavern one night, spotted a gnome who was deep in his cups, eventually gets into a tavern brawl. Fight was quick. Dimitri was the victor. She's impressed with how quickly the fight was won and how he handled himself in this brawl. So she invites him to the Unbroken Tusk Inn for her team. Next is Iris. So Pequeña had a friend tell her that there was a new face in town, was asking some strange questions. Intrigued, Pequeña went and talked to this person. They kind of had a conversation over dinner, got to know each other a little bit, and come to find out that this person is learning to use magic. And so she thought that could be useful in her team and has invited her to come in to the Unbroken Tusk Inn and have a team meeting. Last is Nell. So Pequeña had heard of Nell's reputation with one of the local gangs. So Nell is an orphan and has been adopted of sorts by one of the local gangs. She doesn't love it, but she's trying to get out. So we're going to try and help her with that. Pequeña had heard of her reputation. She's hoping that Nell can bring some street smarts to the group. So she's invited her to the Unbroken Tusk Inn, and hopefully everybody will meet there together and our adventure can kick off as written. And we'll see how that goes. So that's kind of the plan, to get everybody together. And I'm going to send all of these out to my players. So Chosen and Jimmy will get a message just like, hey, what do you think about this? And if they don't like it, we'll change it, right? Like, the game is really about the players and making them happy and intrigued and immersed in the experience. So if they don't like it and if they want to tweak it a little bit, I'm totally okay with that and we'll work with it. So I'm going to send these out probably in the next day or so, on a couple days before our session, make sure everybody's cool with that, and then we'll move on. So in the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master from Sly Flourish, there's a couple different steps he goes through to make your session prep easier and quicker. Step one is to review the characters. We've kind of already done that. Chosen's the Bugbear Barbarian, who was a pirate. Jimmy's a friend of his who happened to save his life. Dimitri, our gnome fighter, is just angry, kind of has small man syndrome. Iris Applebottom, halfling warlock, had dreams of Jigao and traveled here for the first time. Jimmy, our sea elf druid, acts like a boy scout in kind of an annoying way. Lastly, we have Nell Lavender, who's a human dancing bard, an orphan that's been adopted by a gang. Next is a strong start. So this is just a way to kind of get things up and going, so you jump right in and get your players excited to play. This is adapted from the adventure that I wrote, right? We have to adapt. So the party's going to meet Pequeña at the Unbroken Tusk Inn. We talked about how they all got recruited there, and then we're going to read the Tavern Troubles box from the Great Grung Grab, and links for that will be in the description. That's just the adventure that I wrote, so we'll go play through that. It's going to be adapted a little bit, but Pequeña wants to represent the Horde in the Festival of Merit. She wants to get promoted. But first she wants to test them and their grit, so she's going to have them help a friend of hers, Sharpwatch, who is running the maze for the festival this year. And this is straight from the Call of the Netherdeep book. I'm pulling it out. Someone at the festival needs help. So Sharpwatch is an Aarakocra. I can never say that right, but you click on this. This is what Sharpwatch looks like, an Aarakocra. I think I said that right. Who running the maze. And then he just mentioned to Pequeña there's something about rats in the maze. He just needs some help clearing them out. Maybe why don't you go down and meet him at the entrance of the festival? He can kind of explain more what's going on. That's step one. After this is all explained to them, I'm going to then have the tavern brawl break out. And depending on how that goes, they may get room and board for the evening. They may have to find, nights where they normally sleep, or they have been sleeping. But in the morning, I'm going to have Pequeña come and give them a little note that says, hey, the village elders want to come and talk to you, whatever else. But that evening, I want them to go and to talk to Sharpwatch, where Sharpwatch is going to tell them that there's some giant rats that found their way into the maze. He needs them to be cleared out before the festival can begin, and he's going to give them 1 gold piece per rat. A bounty on each of them. And they need to bring the bodies out so that it's not nasty and rotting inside the maze itself. All right, next in our prep is scenes, and this is kind of like encounters. The first one is at the Unbroken Tusk Inn, so everybody's gathered. We talked about that. We'll probably beat that to death already. Next is the maze, and I actually have a page for this, so we can change this to do at, I think it's Festival Maze. Yep, there it is, and then you can link to there. And then click on it, and we've just got a map here. And I got this on Reddit. Someone just was giving out a bunch of free maps in the Call of the Netherdeep subreddit, so I'll provide a link for this as well. There's a whole bunch of maps in there. This is one I downloaded and will be using for our maze fight, where they go track down and find the giant rats. And I'm not sure how many I'm going to start. I'm going to probably start with like 4 giant rats, and then if it's not challenging enough, I'll add a couple more giant rats. Level 1, you're kind of squishy, so we'll have to play that one by ear. And then we can go here, backlink. Next is the Kryn Dynasty Outpost. So this is where the party is going to go and talk to the village elders and get the assignment to go talk to Czar, who is then going to ask them to go find her fishing friends. So that's the Kryn Dynasty Outpost. Everything I need to know about that is in the PDF. Next is Czar's house, so they got to go find Czar in her house and talk to her. Again, everything I need to know for that is in the PDF. Next is the swamp, so they'll spend some time after they talk to Czar. Hopefully they'll go and make their way to the swamp, where they have to do some investigating and some searching, looking for clues and that sort of thing. Everything for there is also in the PDF. Pretty simple. And I don't know how far we're going to get. I've over-prepared. I tend to do that. Get a couple of an extra encounter or two. I'm hoping we'll at least make it to get to the Grung Village, but we may not. It's only 3 hours. We'll see. So just in case, I've got the Grung Village, and this is the same thing I did with the maze. It's just a location in our campaign database. And here is this pulled straight from the PDF. You've got your locations, and then inside each of the locations down here, I've got something quick, like here's 2 Grung, and then I've got a link to the stat block for the Grung. So you click on this, it'll pull open the D&D Beyond page. Here's the Grung, here's their stat blocks, here's any information you may need. So you can kind of click on that real quick. For each of the locations, I've got treasure, if you need like checks or things like that to unlock doors. So there's like all of that information is here. It's easy for me. I'm going to have it on my phone probably. Quick, easy reference. Next is secrets and clues, and these are just kind of informational items that you give your players to help get them more immersed inside the story and in the adventure. And these can be given by anybody. It doesn't really matter. It's just things that so that you're thinking ahead, little breadcrumb to get them where you want them to go. So I've got a couple of these. The first one is every year there's a friendly competition between the factions of within Jigao. Several small events held during the Festival of Merit. The winners of each small event earn points for their faction, and at the end of the festival, the faction with the most points wins. The winning faction receives a trophy to display for the year, which is that headdress we were talking about, but more importantly, they get bragging rights to hold over their rivals. So this is something, an NPC, some random guy they encounter on the street or in an inn. I've also added the trophy is a ceremonial headdress, which is presented to the faction leader, who typically wears it to council meetings all year long. So when I have them go meet the council, I'm going to have the Gakthus clan leader, Elder Kobul Kaz, wearing the headdress. It's just something I'll mention offhandedly. And so it kind of immerses them as well, and then maybe later or beforehand they will learn that that's where it came from. Maybe they can ask him about it. I don't know. We'll see how that kind of comes up, if it even does at all. Each member of the winning team also receives a winner's badge that they can exchange for a favor with the leadership of the town. This isn't like, give me anything I want, but it's something small that the party or a person can ask of the leadership. The winner of each small event also receives a Medal of Merit, so that's straight from the Call of the Netherdeep book. It has special buffs. For the last 5 years, the Gakthus clan, the Goblins, have been the winning faction. I just picked them because they are not the faction my party chose. My party chose the Norgab Horde. I would have reversed this had it been the other way. A couple of locals, Io and Dermot, have been out doing odd jobs in town, trying to earn the interest of one of the factions. So Io is really interested in getting out of Jigao. She wants to go on an adventure. So her and her friend Dermot have been doing odd jobs around town, picking up party members, and trying to get an adventuring group together. So I kind of want to lead to that. The rivals are a pretty big part of the campaign and part of the story. So kind of lead into that now and lean into it a little bit. The final contest this year is rumored to be a race of some sort. Every year the events change. So this will be something that they can ask about if they'd like. The Auroran Watch doesn't enter a team into the contest. They claim it's because it wouldn't be fair to pit trained soldiers over civilians, but in truth it's because Dearth hates the headdress, right? This is something fun and interesting to add to the story. May not even come up. And then a few years ago there were a couple fishermen who used to bring the best tasting fish to Jigao, and they stopped coming and no one knows why or what happened to them. So this leads into going and finding the fishing village. It has a little bit of story there, just kind of linking that all in. Mostly we're focused on the festival because that's the big event that's coming up. Next is our NPC section. So we just want to review each of these. I've got links. So Pequeña, here's what she looks like. Some notes. And then I've got one of these for each of the NPCs I expect the party to run into. And I'm going to have a list of like random NPCs if they want to meet like a random shopkeeper or a random person on the road, whatever that is. But here's the big ones. So I got Silverspoon. She owns the Unbroken Tusk Inn Sharpwatch, who runs the maze. Elder Ushru, who's the head of the Norgab Horde. Elder Kolbu Kaz, who's head of the Gakthus clan. Dearth Mirim, who's head of the Aurora Watch in Jigao. And then if they get to the Grung Village, there are a couple of NPCs there that they will run into. I don't think that they'll get there in the first session, so I'm not worried about it, but if I do need them, I know where in the PDF to find the names, and we can kind of figure it out from there. Next is monsters. So these are just links straight to the D&D Beyond stat blocks. So the first is an orc and a goblin. These are from the Tavern Brawl. I've got giant rats, which will be in the maze. I've got grung. I've got the different grung. I need to actually add poisonous snake, because in one of the buildings in there, there's some poisonous snakes, so I'll put a link for that. I'll update that in a second. And then here's treasure. I don't think they'll run into any of this unless they make it to the Grung village, but I've got a bag of holding and a link for that. Potion of healing, and then in the adventure it asks you to roll a couple of d6. I do that beforehand just so I don't have to like roll in front of everybody, and which isn't a bad thing. It's just the way that I choose to DM. So I roll beforehand. We got 4 vials of Grung poison, green, blue, gold, and purple, and their effects that they can find, and then 5 Grung poison darts. The next section is things that I like to create when I am doing my games. This is like things that are not necessary. So I've got a rival party friendliness tracker. And since there is an opportunity for them to run into the rival party, I've already got this printed and made. I've posted this on Reddit, and you can just print this out. Mine's laminated, and then I'm going to use some wet erase markers to keep track of this. I'll have that ready. Got that done. PC quick references. I've got this. I'm probably just going to use the table, to be honest, which is why that's checked off. Laminate the Explorer's Guide to Wild Mountain and call the Netherdeep maps. So these come in the book. That's that. And then the last thing is to print the treasure item descriptions. So what I have done is I've created a little item description for each of the items I'm going to give out. So there are a bag of holding. There's the potion of healing. There's little descriptions for each of these vials. And I'm just going to print them out and hand them to my players once they've identified them. So they have them in front of them, and when they use them, I'll take them back. Easy to keep track of that way. The other thing that I need to do, and actually isn't on the list, is print minis for enemies. So I've got a bunch of these minis for the party itself, like the rival party. I need to print them out for the enemies that they will be facing. I actually bought and painted, you can kind of see these guys are some of the grung. So I'll put a link for this where I found these guys on Etsy. It's just an Etsy store. I've got, I don't know, there's probably 10 of them, 10 of these little guys that my wife and I painted, and then some of the kids helped. I'll show you one of the kids. This one with a little black mouth. But you can also just use cardstock like these guys, where I'll provide links for this in the description below. I'll provide the one for the rivals and for the enemies that you'll face in I'm calling it Chapter 0, which is just our pre-adventure. Alright, so here's kind of what the page will look like. I'll provide links for all of this in the description below. So you just print this off on cardstock or regular paper, and then along these lines, let's see if I can draw these. There's like these little lines right around here. Along these, you'll cut them out, and then along that you'll fold it in half, and then it gets you the double side, like you'll see on both sides, the character. And then you can put tape around them or laminate them, whatever you want to do. And then I hot glue them to washers, like a 1-inch washer. Paint the base if you want, and then you've got yourself a really cheap mini. Pretty easy to do. But that's pretty much all that I have planned for today. Hopefully you guys let me know what you think. I'll let you know how session 1 goes in our next video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. We'll catch you later.